When I've tried to make changes to my behaviors or to little aspects of myself in the past, this one mental block is the one thing that consistently has messed me up. And it's something that is under discussed, but is also one of the biggest causes of self-sabotage. And it comes down to the Carl Jung quote, "What you resist persists." Welcome to Grow With Intention, the podcast for people who want to create a life that feels good. So in this episode, we're going to be dissecting the quote, "What you resist persists," so that the changes that you want to make in your life can become easier to make. So that you can stop feeling like you are constantly self-sabotaging without understanding how to stop self-sabotaging. So I was recently watching this show called Shrinking with my partner. It's got Jason Segel in it. And he is this therapist. His wife has died. He has gone off the rails and he's kind of just experimenting with his therapy clients. He has this one patient who is a discharged soldier, and this guy keeps on picking fights in bars. So Jason Segel, who's gone rogue, starts taking this guy to MMA sparring classes. When Jason's patient asks him, "Do you think this is actually going to work?" Jason says,
"Definitely. Your time overseas is filled with trauma and violence. All that violence is still inside you, and it keeps finding ways to get out. What you resist persists." That's Carl Jung. Or it'll make your bloodlust stronger, and you'll become twice as dangerous. Well, we'll just have to see.
Sending this guy to MMA sparring classes is definitely questionable, but the intention behind it makes sense. If there is a behavior in your life that you want to let go, like fighting in bars or just procrastinating or impulse buying, but you are resisting it, it will continue to persist. But let's get clear first on what resist actually means, because that's kind of the key to this puzzle. If you don't get that, it's going to be hard to understand and apply this idea. How do you know if you are resisting something in your life? So let's take the example of procrastination. If you have a pattern of procrastinating in your life, and one day you notice yourself procrastinating, and then it kicks off this whole cycle. Maybe you react to that procrastination with a sense of despair, a sense of, why am I like this? I'll always be like this. This is going to ruin my life. Or dismay, so I shouldn't be like this. This shouldn't be happening. Or frustration and annoyance, so I hate that I do this. That is what resistance is. While you may not hear those kind of statements in your head, imagine the vibes that come alongside those statements. You'll be feeling those vibes. So when Jason Segel told this patient of his to start doing MMA sparring, he was, in a way, trying to help this guy to stop resisting his anger. He was helping him to change his reaction to his anger. His course of action wasn't the best course of action. There are a bunch of different ways to approach this. But at the end of the day, he was trying to apply the quote of "what you resist persists." So if you have a pattern that keeps on patterning, you feel like you are self-sabotaging, you've really struggled to let this pattern in your life go, what can you do? How can you stop resisting it so that it can stop persisting? Start by setting a goal to continue doing exactly what you are doing. So this isn't about lowering your standards or giving up. This is about letting go of resistance towards this behavior. So if you have had a pattern of procrastinating, you've had a pattern of impulse buying, and you're trying to change it, give yourself like 3 months where you've actually set the goal to keep on doing exactly what you're doing. So first, that starts out with actually identifying what you have been doing. So really mapping out that habit loop of trigger, behavior, reward, so that you understand the mechanics of what's happening in the background. And then set your goal to follow that habit loop. Keep on following it for the next 3 months. Mindlessly repeating the same behaviors does not create change. Never has, never will. But mindfully repeating the same behavior patterns is a different story. Mindfulness as a word gets thrown around a lot. The mindfulness that I'm talking about is simply noticing without judgment, literally just to observe. So whenever you carry out this pattern, you want to mindfully notice it without judgment. You want to act like you are a bird watcher and you just seen like a really exciting, rare, and interesting bird. It's this fascinating experience that you get to watch. You can get out your little notepad, you can start taking notes on it. And observe your inner experience. Observe the behavior that flows from that inner experience. Observe what it feels like to behave in that way. That is how you stop resisting, by changing your reaction to your pattern. At the end of every podcast episode, I share my recommendations of the week for people who want to dive deeper into the topic of today's episode. This episode, I'm going to have 2 podcast episodes that I recommend to you. The first being my podcast episode, I think it's called The Power of Surrender. It's all about surrendering. Even though it sounds like it's not related to this podcast episode, it is. They're all interlinked because this is one of my favorite topics. You know I'm thinking about all the branches of it. And I'm going to recommend another podcast episode, which is called One Small Idea That Can Change Your Life. It is all about dismantling certain behaviors. If you were thinking as you listen to this episode, okay, like observe this behavior like I'm a bird watcher, what does that actually entail? What would I be observing? I'm not even sure how to approach that. That episode is for you. It covers a really helpful concept in this arena. If you're on YouTube, that will be linked on the screen as well as down below. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it will be linked in the show notes. I appreciate you so much, and I'll see you soon.